Day 15, Common Mistakes. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Rivka Edery, author of Spatial Psy. Now, I can give you a list of obvious errors. Do not cheat. Do not skip the log. Do not make things up. And you would nod along and you would learn nothing because you're not doing any of those things. You have been at this for 2 weeks and you're working carefully. That kind of list is flattery disguised as instruction. It lets you feel corrected while changing nothing. So today is a different list. Today, I'm going to show you the mistakes that feel like good practice. The errors you are committing with a clear conscience right now because they present themselves as care, as thoroughness, as rigor. These are the ones that do real damage, and they do it precisely because you cannot catch them by trying harder. Trying harder is what produces them. I'll be honest with you. 3 of these were live in my session on day 14. I did not avoid them because I am beyond them. I avoided them because I know their shape by now, and I watched for them. You're making at least 2 of these right now. Let's find out which. Mistake 1, waiting to log it properly. Here is how it presents itself, and notice how reasonable it sounds. An impression arrives, mid-map, say, or while you're turning the 3rd card. And you think, I do not want to break the flow of the session. I will hold on to this and write it down properly at the end, where I can give it the attention it deserves. That is care. That is you trying to do the thing well. And it is fatal. Here's why in the book's own words, Spatial Psy. And it is one of the most important sentences in the entire Spatial Psy method. An impression not written down during the session cannot be scored afterward. Hours later, there is no honest way to distinguish a real unlogged impression from a memory formed after the outcome was known. Read that again. Not is less reliable. It cannot be scored. It is inadmissible. Because think about what has happened in that hour. You have turned all the cards. You have seen how things resolved. And now you sit down to write your impression and it is gone. Not gone, worse than gone. It has been quietly reshaped by everything you learned in the interval. And you will have no experience of the reshaping. It will feel exactly like recall. You did not preserve the impression. You constructed one. Out of the impression and the outcome mixed together, and you will never be able to separate them again. And the book Spatial Psy gives the rule that follows, and it also gives you the permission you need. Impressions do not always respect the touch pass. If an image or a word or a sensation arrives at any other point in the session, while drawing the map, mid-synthesis, after the cards are turned, log it the moment it arrives, in the margin if necessary, marked with when it came. And when matters enormously. An impression that arrived before the flip is a different kind of evidence from one that arrived after. And if you do not mark the timing, you have destroyed that distinction forever. And then the line I want you to write down somewhere you will see it. The pen is part of the instrument, not a record of the instrument, part of it. An unwritten impression is not a slightly weaker data point. It's not a data point at all. Mistake 2, reading the interesting card first. This is the one I nearly made on day 14 and stopped myself in front of you. It presents itself as good judgment. That card is obviously the most significant thing on the table. It's dramatic. It is isolated. It is clearly where the meaning is. It would be perverse to ignore it and start with the boring ones in the middle. Here is what is actually happening. Whatever you read first sets the frame. Every card that follows arrives into a structure that the first card built, and so the other cards stop being independent evidence and become supporting cast for the story that has already begun. You do not get 4 data points. You get 1 data point and 3 echoes, and the echoes will feel like corroboration. The sequence is fixed for exactly this reason: geometry, dominant zone, cluster, isolate, void. That order is not an aesthetic preference, and it is not tradition. It is a defense against your own eye. And notice the specific perversity that the sequence protects you from. The most striking card is almost never the one that goes first. An isolate is always read fourth, after the cluster it comments on, because an isolate that is read first has nothing to comment on, and so it will do the only thing it can do, which is to declare itself the subject of the session. You will read the footnote as the headline, and the reading you produce will be coherent, satisfying, and about the wrong thing. If the card is shouting at you, that is not a reason to read it first. That is a reason to be careful about it, because loudness is a property of the card's image, and it is not evidence of anything at all. Mistake 3, improving the map. You drew a gap, you flipped the cards, and now looking at it again, you can see that the gap was wider than you drew it. So you reach over and correct the drawing, not to cheat, but because you want the record to be accurate. Accuracy is a virtue. You're being conscientious. This one is nearly perfect as a trap, and I want you to see exactly why. You are looking properly only because you now know what landed there. The reason the gap suddenly seems wider is that you have seen what came of it, and the meaning has retroactively made the space feel more significant. The correction is not accuracy. It is the outcome flowing backward into the evidence through a channel labeled being careful. And you will experience it as diligence every single time. Nobody has ever adjusted a map while thinking, I am now falsifying my data. They think, I'm fixing a small error before it becomes a big one. So the rule from day 3, and it is absolute. After the first flip, the map does not change. Not a line, not a nudge, not a small correction to a gap you sincerely believe you mismeasured. A misdrawn map, honestly frozen, is evidence. An accurate map, reconstructed from memory, is not. Notice how counterintuitive that is, and how completely it inverts the ordinary meaning of accuracy. A map with a genuine error in it, left alone, still tells you the truth about one thing, what you actually perceived before you knew the answer. That is the only question the map was ever asking. A map that has been improved after the flip tells you nothing at all, because its accuracy is now contaminated by knowledge and you cannot separate the two. If you realize afterward that you misjudged something, good. That is a real observation. Write it in your integration notes where it is permanently marked as a thing you thought after you saw the cards. The map records perception. The integration notes record reflection. Do not let the second leak into the first. Mistake 4, the sophisticated void. This one is my fault, and I want to take responsibility for having caused it. On day 9, I told you the void is often the most important information in the layout. I told you the unexpressed live there, and a conscientious reader hearing that concludes, then I had better say something substantial about it, something proportionate to how much it apparently matters. A thin void entry would be a failure of seriousness. So you write something deep. The void at my body shows what I'm refusing to look at. The emptiness in the upper field is the future I'm not letting myself want. Now, here's the problem, and it is structural rather than a matter of your restraint. An emptiness cannot contradict you. There is nothing in it to push back. Whatever you say the void is about, the void will sit there and let you say it. It's the most agreeable surface in the entire method, and it is agreeable for exactly the reason that makes it dangerous. There is nothing there. Every other element of a layout has some resistance. A card has an image that constrains what it can possibly mean. A cluster has members and they can fail to cohere. A distance has a size and it can turn out to be small. But a void has no content, and so it has no capacity to prove you wrong, which means by everything you learned on day 11 and day 12 that a claim about a single void is unfalsifiable by construction. That is the wallpaper face, arriving in the one location on the table where it can never be caught. So record its shape, not its content. Where it is, how big, measured against the cards, what form it takes. The void becomes interpretable in aggregate across many sessions when you can see that it keeps landing in the same region and can start testing whether that is a fact about the field or a fact about your dealing hand. It is never interpretable in one session, and the depth of your entry is not a measure of your seriousness. It is a measure of how much you are willing to invent. Mistake 5, the careful hedge. And this is the one that catches the most intelligent practitioners because it is genuinely difficult to distinguish from a virtue. Here is how it sounds. I should not overclaim. I have only 15 sessions, so I will phrase this cautiously. There may be something forming around the lower left. Something seems to be gathering there, perhaps. That feels like intellectual honesty. It feels like the appropriate humility of someone who knows the limits of their evidence. It is the opposite. Look at what that sentence can do. Can it be wrong? What observation exactly would contradict there may be something forming around the lower left? Nothing. There is no possible future in which that statement fails. If cards land there, it was right. If they do not, well, it only said may, and it said forming, which implies it has not finished. A claim vague enough to never be wrong is a claim that can never be tested. And an untestable claim is not a modest contribution to your log. It is a contaminant because it will sit there accumulating credibility from every session that does not disprove it. And no session can disprove it. Hedging is not humility. It is the manufacture of unfalsifiability wearing humility's clothes. Real humility is different, and it is much harder. Real humility says, my voids fall in the lower right, plainly, without qualifiers. And then it says, if my next 3 sessions show no void in the lower right, this is dead, and it accepts the verdict. That is a modest claim, because it is small and specific, and it might be wrong, and you have said so in advance. Precision is the honest move. Vagueness is the escape hatch, and it is available to you at every moment, and it always looks like the responsible choice. If you cannot state your pattern plainly enough for it to fail, you do not have a pattern. You have a mood, and moods do not go in the log.